Whenever you're ready. Should I begin now?
Yeah, you just wanna-
So, hi everyone. My name is Aranza Zapata. I work over at Partners in Prevention. Thank you for joining us today. We're going to be talking about marijuana and e-cigarettes. So we're going to touch base on all of that and let's get started. Before we begin, a little bit about us and who we are. We're Partners in Prevention. We're a nonprofit organization based in Secaucus, but we serve all of Hudson County. So we focus on promoting wellness and preventing substance abuse throughout the whole county. What is marijuana and cannabis? Marijuana comes from the cannabis plant that has more than 400 chemicals. So the word cannabis is the same thing as marijuana. Marijuana is just the slang term for it. There is the component that's found in marijuana that gives an individual that high feeling is known as THC, and THC levels vary much. They vary a lot. So some products can contain small amounts of marijuana and others can contain higher amounts of marijuana. We're going to talk about a bunch of different products today. A little more information, like I said before, there's no difference between marijuana or cannabis. They're the same thing. They mean the same thing. They're just two terms that are used to describe what we know as marijuana. So like I said, marijuana is the slang term. Now, you might have heard about CBD and THC. So we're going to talk about that. We said before, THC is the component that's responsible for giving someone that high feeling. So THC percentages can vary from as low as 5% all the way up to 90 and 95%. Some popular forms that THC is found in is vaping products, edibles, or the traditional way of smoking marijuana. CBD has very small amounts percentage of THC, so it's not enough to get an individual high, but some products do contain CBD. So some products that you might find CBD in is different oils, lotions, patches, and it's mostly just used as kind of like a lotion type of product. It's not used how marijuana THC would be. So some ways that CBD is used is for anxiety, chronic pain. And THC, like we see over here, is used for smoking marijuana or vapes. So what is vaping? Vaping has been around for quite some time. Before we jump into vaping, do you guys have any questions on anything that I've said before? You can feel free to unmute or say it in the chat. Or are we okay? I'm sorry, what? Oh, okay, awesome, thank you. Okay, so vaping, you might have heard a lot more about vaping now. It's very popular mostly amongst teenagers or the younger audience than it is with the older audience. Vaping was originally targeted as a alternative to smoking cigarettes, but unfortunately it targeted the younger audience, and that's who we're seeing more affected by vaping now. So there's different kinds of vaping devices. As we can see here, these are much larger than these that you would see over here that are easy to conceal or hide. So now the history of vaping, like we said before, the devices just get smaller and smaller. They become more like everyday items that you would see, making them easier for children to hide. And then here we have a really popular vaping product known as the Juul that was pretty popular a few years ago. Now all flavored Juul pods or reusable pods for the Juuls are banned. How does vaping work? So this is typically what a vaping device would look like. So it has the buttons that's used to control the device to turn it on and off, a battery, which is typically rechargeable, a mouthpiece to use to inhale the product or the cannabis, and a chamber, everything that's used to vaporize the product. So now some dangers of the way that a vape is constructed is, of course, the battery. Batteries have been known to explode, and it can happen whether it's in people's pockets, people's mouths, anything like that. There has been cases of that. So that's just one of the dangers that can happen from a vapes.
Hi, everyone. So my name is Excel. Just sorry about that. Yeah. So my name is Excel. I'm a prevention educator with Partners in Prevention. So I'm a prevention educator with Partners in Prevention. Sorry about. There. Can everyone hear me now? Perfect. Okay. Sorry about that. A lot of technical difficulties. So as I was saying, my name is Exau. I am a prevention educator, just like my colleague Aranza. I'm just going to talk a little bit about what is exactly in these vapes. As you can see on the list, these are like some of the chemicals that you might find. Nicotine is a highly addictive substance that is found in cigarettes. Carcinogens, these cause cancers, acetaldehyde and formaldehyde. Diacetyl. Has anyone ever heard of diacetyl? If you could just write in the chat. Okay, so no. So diacetyl. I don't know if you've ever heard of popcorn lungs, but back in the day, popcorn factories used to use diacetyl, this chemical in the flavoring of butter in the butter for popcorn. So these workers, as they kept using these chemicals to put into the flavoring of the butter, their lungs would get affected, and it would inflame, and it would kind of look like popcorn lungs. I don't know if you ever heard of that. It's probably been in the news, but ever since they found out that correlation with diacetyl and popcorn lungs, they removed that chemical from the butter, from the flavoring, and now those workers didn't have these popcorn lungs. So that's one of the many chemicals that are being found in vapes. Unfortunately, since this is such a new kind of wave, so to speak, that a lot of people are using instead of smoking regular cigarettes. Not to say that smoking regular cigarettes is the way to go. Both ways are still very detrimental, and they're very high risk choices. So these are just, like I said, some of the many chemicals that someone could find in these vapes. Like I said, since it's such a new thing, we as you know, me personally as a prevention educator, there are probably still more chemicals that we don't know of that to this day that we could probably find in vapes. Vaping marijuana physically resembles a nicotine vaping device, works in the same way. A person wouldn't be able to really tell that another person is vaping marijuana. The only way is by the little cartridge that a person plugs into the vaping device. So effects of marijuana use include difficulty with critical thinking, impaired reaction time, decline in school performances, and increased risk of mental health issues. So in the next slide, as you can see here, there's a little cart, as a lot of people say. It kind of looks like a buttery honey looking substance, almost like amber. This is the only way a person can tell that a person is vaping marijuana. It's extremely potent, as like my colleague Aranza was saying. The percentage of THC varies. So in the traditional way that a person might smoke marijuana or cannabis, so to speak, it's about 13 to 25% THC. In vapes, so when a person vapes cannabis, it's about 60 to 95% THC. So as you can see, the potency is way higher than when a person smokes traditional marijuana. Added threat, I don't know if has anyone in the chat, if you could write in the chat, has anyone heard of fentanyl? No. So fentanyl is a synthetic opioid. An opioid is a pain medication. So for anyone that's ever, gone through a surgery or has broken something and they've gone to the doctor at that surgery, a doctor will usually prescribe opioids, a pain medication to alleviate the pain. What sometimes happens, not in all cases, sometimes it happens, a person will become highly addicted to these opioids and they end up, wanting, depending on the prescription medication. When that happens, sometimes the doctor will cut them off when they notice that they're becoming addicted to these opioids. And then what ends up happening is sometimes that a person will get it through illegal means. So the street version of an opioid is heroin. So nowadays, fentanyl is being replaced by heroin because it's much cheaper and it's much easier to bring into the States. So on the slide here is a picture of heroin and fentanyl. In heroin, that little vial of heroin, that is the amount of heroin that is required to kill a full-grown human being. Right next to it is fentanyl, and that is the amount of fentanyl that is required to kill a human being. So as you can see, the differences, the potency of fentanyl compared to heroin is very high, higher than anything. Any questions before I move forward? Okay. So the reason why I bring fentanyl into this conversation is because fentanyl is being found in vapes. It's also being found in marijuana. It's being found in a lot of these drugs, and it's such a dangerous drug right now that a lot of individuals, especially the youth, which we're going to talk a little bit more about the youth later on in this presentation, they're being affected by this. And as you can see in the picture, fentanyl is very potent, and just a little dose can be very detrimental to a person's health. So vaping in the youth, vaping is less harmful than smoking. This is a quote that was said by the youth. That is not true. Vaping is not less harmful than smoking. Honestly, at the end of the day, it's the same thing. The person is smoking. It's a high risk choice. They're leaning into the trigger point to becoming addicted to to nicotine, also to getting other health problems like cancer or lung cancer or breathing problems, maybe even oral cancer. We're going to talk about a little bit about that later on in the presentation. It's inexpensive. That part is true. So back in the day, I grew up here in West New York. Back in the day, I think you saw it in a couple of slides back there. There was this company called Juul, and they had these little carts. So it was like a pack of 4 for like $12 back in the day. So does anyone know how many cigarettes come in a pack of cigarettes? You can ballpark guess. Nothing? No. 20. There's 20 cigarettes in a pack of cigarettes. So the same amount of nicotine in a pack of cigarettes is also comes in those little carts of Juul. So a person potentially, if they're smoking that little Juul, is smoking the same amount of nicotine as a pack of cigarettes. And that is so dangerous because, like I said, this is a pack of 4 for $12. And then a pack of cigarettes usually ranges from $15 to $18. So yes, it's inexpensive, and it's easily accessible as well. Flavorings, that is another reason as to why the youth is so attracted to these products, because of the different flavorings these products have. They have strawberry, apple, peach, banana, all these flavors that the youth are very familiar with and they like. So these are association tactics that usually companies try to do. They try to associate things that the youth like. For example, Skittles, they've made it into a flavor for vaping. Captain Crunch, Apple Jacks, these are all just familiar brands that a person might know. So the way I like to say this is that companies usually like to target the youth because at a young age, if anyone knows this or not, a person's brain is fully developed at the age of 25. So at a young age, these companies try to get these youth, they get them hooked on the product at a young age. And then after that, once they start working and making money, what do you think happens? They start buying more product because they're so hooked on the product and they're so dependent on it. So that's why they try to use these association tactics to get the youth hooked. Edibles. This is another form of a person can consume cannabis or marijuana. Currently, the only edibles you can buy in New Jersey dispensaries are like things like tablets or gummies. Nothing like brownies or cookies or muffins. Those are very illegal. Dispensaries cannot sell that. A dispensary, if no one knows, is a legal establishment where a state can sell legal cannabis. Cannabis is the legal term to describe the drug. And here in New Jersey, a person has to be 21 and older with a state ID to purchase legal cannabis at one of these dispensaries. And also, just like vapes, edibles have a high THC concentration. It ranges from 60 to 95%. So the dangers of vaping and marijuana on the brain, we spoke a little bit about that. I touched a little bit about that. If a person, ventures into doing drugs or even drinking alcohol at a young age before the age of 25, it can affect the development of their brain. Lungs, it's very dangerous for the lungs. They can cause lung cancer, breathing problems. So this is these are like certain parts of the brain, if you can see on the slide here. For example, the brainstem, it regulates information between brain and spinal column. If a person uses THC, it causes anti-nausea effects. Cerebellum, motor coordination, balance, and then if a person uses THC, causes impaired coordination. So the possible effects of smoking marijuana on the lungs, as you can see here on the slide, may cause injury to the airways, may increase respiratory symptoms, can cause immune system dysfunctions. So this is just a little bit on what the dangers of vapes can do to the mouth, can cause dry mouth, bad breath, inflammation of the gums, dental cavities, increased risk of tooth loss, and increased risk of oral cancer. These are all common issues, even if a person smokes cigarettes as well. So now we're just going to talk a little bit about the laws. I already touched upon it a little bit. Like I said, a person has to be 21 and older to purchase legal cannabis at one of these dispensaries in New Jersey. It's illegal if a person sells it on the street. So if a person is distributing it in the street, that is illegal. So here is a map of the whole United States. The dark green states show that it's illegal both recreationally and medically. So by medical, yes, there is something called medical marijuana that is usually prescribed by a licensed doctor. Not any doctor can prescribe medical marijuana. It has to be a doctor that is licensed by the state that can prescribe medical marijuana. Also, on top of that, a person needs to have the disease that's on the list that a doctor can prescribe medical marijuana. So, for example, New Jersey is one of those states that is legal both recreationally and medically. California is also a state that is legal both recreationally and medically. So if a person was, let's say they're 21 and over, and they purchased marijuana in New Jersey, and they they took a road trip to Texas, which is not legal for both recreational and medical marijuana, would they get in trouble with the law? You could write it in the chat if you want. Yes, there we go. Yes, correct. Now, if a person, same scenario, if they go from New Jersey all the way to California, would they get in trouble? Yes, they do get in trouble because, yes, they do get in trouble because the drug is still illegal federally. So by state laws, there are certain states, like I said, are legal both recreational and medical, but federally, the drug is still illegal. So a person cannot cross state borders with the drug. It's still illegal by federal laws. But if a person were to, let's say, they could come from Jersey to California with nothing on them, they're 21 and over, they have a state ID, they can go to a dispensary in California and purchase it. And then they'll be okay there. But that doesn't mean that they can go outside and smoke it in public either. That is still considered public intoxication. It's just like alcohol. A person, if they're 21 and over, they just can't drink alcohol in the street in public. Can't do that. It's okay in their house or in a spot that is designated for smoking. So these are more offensive by minors. So the first offense, officers will issue a written notice, which must include the person's name, address, and date of birth. For minors under the age of 18, notice must be reported to the person's parents and guardians. Second offense is more of the same thing, but then they get referred to a community drug program. It's not mandatory for the minor to attend, but they get recommended to it. Third offense is more of the same thing. We bring this up because unfortunately, yes, the laws are not as strict as they used to be for cannabis for minors, but what I like to tell the youth, because I work with youth, what I like to tell them is, like I said before, their brains are still developing to the age of 25. So any type of drug that a minor might do, whether it's alcohol, marijuana, nicotine, all those drugs will affect the development of their brain. And in the long run, it might not affect them next week or a day after, maybe a year, but who's to say in 15, 20 years, it could cause negative effects on their bodies. So these are just resources for prevention and education and treatment. If you or anyone or yourself might know someone that is suffering from addiction, or you just want to know a little bit more information about this topic, these are just some helpful resources that you can go on. So the Addiction Center is for any state, Addiction Treatment Directory for New Jersey, Perform Care New Jersey for more resources. SAMHSA is a great website if you want to educate yourself a little bit more, or you can always contact us for more information and resources as well. We work with Partners in Prevention. If you wanted to contact Chelsea as well, she's on the call. And you could reach out to her, and she could reach out to us. We're more than happy to share more information. This is more resources: NJ Quit Line, Tobacco Free for Health in New Jersey, Truth Initiative, and Behind the Haze. So these are just some tips. Do not vape. Don't let yourself be pressured into it. I know it's for some people, it's more easier said than done, but this is the #1 thing to do. Stay busy. I think this is very important. If you're busy, you're doing things, you're always on the move, you won't have time to do things that you're not supposed to be doing. Avoid vaping triggers. That's more like let's say a person hangs out in a group of friends and they're all vaping, or they're doing anything that they're not supposed to be doing. Try to avoid them, try to make an excuse or something, oh, I can't make it or something like that, or just keep busy. Ask for help and reward yourself. And this is just different activities available for the youth. Open Futures right here on 67th Street in West New York. It's kind of like a little recreation and hangout spot for the youth. I used to go there personally. I graduated from Memorial right here. I used to go there personally, hang out, play basketball, lift, do work, homework. The Boys and Girls Club of Hudson County is in Jersey City. It's an after school program for teens and youth, kind of the same thing like Hope and Future, but they offer a little bit more like classes and stuff. And the educational Gilmore Community Learning Center, more of the same thing. And that's about it on my end. Do you have any questions for me or Aranza before we end the presentation?
For people to ask questions in the chat. Is cannabis or marijuana as bad for your lungs as nicotine is?
So is cannabis and marijuana? So cannabis and marijuana are the same thing. They're used to describe the same drug. Just cannabis is the legal term to describe the drug. Marijuana is the illegal term. So nicotine is more of a chemical that affects the brain. the more a person keeps smoking like cigarettes, the more nicotine they're consuming, and it causes a chemical reaction in their brain, causing them to want more, crave more. It's kind of like a sugar thing. A person keeps eating candy, they get that sugar rush. But once they don't have it enough, they get like that down feeling, like they're really like down and just like, oh my God. It's like a sugar crash, I would like to say. So kind of like it's kind of like the same concept when a person keeps smoking cigarettes for years and suddenly they just stop, that the deprivation of nicotine, that their brain is craving it. They want more. So that's what's causing their bad moods. So it's more so what affects the lungs is the tar. Oh, sorry. Did I go away?
That's okay, just sit at.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So it's more so the tar that affects the lungs, not the nicotine. The nicotine affects the brain. So there hasn't been cases where marijuana / cannabis has given a person like, cancer or stuff like that, but it will cause breathing problems. That's why some athletes don't, smoke, or like for example, football players or track stars. Some, yeah, we've heard of certain athletes, professional athletes, smoke cannabis, but for the most part, it's not really that popular because yes, it will affect the breathing. I mean, me personally, I was a football player, and my coach would be like, anything you smoke will affect your lung, your breathing. You need to breathe. You need that stamina. So anything the person might smoke can affect their lungs.
Thank you very much.
No problem.
Doesn't seem to be any other questions in the chat box. Someone said, thank you, this was very informative, which I will second. Thank you very much. This was
No
very
problem. No problem. So I hope everyone has a great day and a great rest of the week. Thank you so much.